So here we are in the fluid simulation section of this course. Now, I've said things like this before, but I'm going to say it one more time. This section of Houdini could warrant its own entire course if we really wanted to get into all the nitty-gritty details that go into solving fluid simulations. You could probably even get a PhD in this stuff if you wanted to, but that's really not the goal of this course. We really just want to stand on the shoulder of giants who figured all this stuff out for us and do our thing. So enter the industry standard flip solver. The fluid implicit particle approach is what that is short for, is used across many different applications, such as RealFlow, X-Particles. Maya, I think, uses it in their Bifrost solver, and I'm sure there are more applications out there that are using Flip for their dynamic simulations. And it actually combines a hybrid volumetric calculation and a particle calculation together to get the best of both worlds. So liquids, in my opinion, are the most difficult type of simulation that can be done inside of Houdini. But that's not for the fact that they're hard to understand. They just take a ton of resources and tinkering, time, and most of all, it takes a lot of experience to get comfortable with using them. So here are some of the challenges we face. We've got we've come up to this point, and when we're bringing all these different aspects of Houdini together under one roof, it really helps to have a good general knowledge of how Houdini and simulations in general work. This is why we've saved this for the close to the end of this course, is just because of all the generalist knowledge that is required to kind of like really get behind what's going on with Flip. Almost every type of workflow that you could put into use in Houdini comes together with Flip in one way or another. We've got particles and volumes, both, kind of feeding off one another. And, we don't need to think too deeply about what's going on with the volumes, but we just need to know that they're there in the background and that they're influencing the simulation. We also have things like signed distance fields, meshes, and just loads of attributes that are all communicating with one another. Other reasons why fluids are challenging is we've got, when we start doing production quality fluid simulations, we end up using a large amounts of computation time, and we use a ton of memory, and also, the caches that are generated by the Flip simulation itself can be absolutely gigantic. So in the end, after all is said and done, we wind up with a bunch of particles on disk that represent where the fluid particles are moving. But there's another step that we would have to accomplish after we do that. And this is sort of like the third major challenge that I see with it, which is we need to convert those particles into a surface. So that seems harmless, when I just bring it up like that. But in actuality, this step can sometimes take longer than it took to run the initial simulation in the first place. Generally speaking, when we get a bunch of particles, we're going to use VDB tools to create signed distance fields that represent the surface around our particles. And then maybe we'll apply some smoothing here and then convert it back into a sequence of meshes that will also take up additional gobs of disk space. On top of that, all of the meshes are going to have changing topology from frame to frame. So we aren't going to be able to do things. It just makes it a more involved process if we want to add things like motion blur or time stretching after the fact. So most of the difficulty that occurs with running fluid simulations comes from the requirements of the target that you're trying to hit. Is it production quality? How detailed is it? And given the right types of balancing and optimizing things, it can either be really painful and impossibly slow, or you can find a nice happy medium where you get an awesome result that you're happy with. And that's going to pass, whether you're doing it for a personal project or a client. So simulation, in the end, is always about compromise, and I find that Flip is the one that I have to compromise the most with at the end of the day. So with that being said, let's just get into some of the theory about how Flip works in the next lesson, and then we will go on and make a much more in-depth example after that.